So what about those cravings that seem to derail us? Yeah, they always come up. You know, that thing that makes you feel that way when you were at that place with that person. Oh, I just love chocolate. I love it. I love it. I hear that all the time. I can't not eat chocolate. I can't not eat ice cream. I just love those cookies. What about those cravings? We've been talking about fasting. Can fasting help with cravings? Can fasting really help you break the cravings, get over them? And that's what we're going to be talking about here on the show tonight. Hey, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. If you're new to me, that's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new year, new you. I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes who want to put their diabetes in remission, who want to get off of medications, in fact, who want to reverse their diabetes. That's what we do here on the show. And I am now, wow, what did I say? 80 something hours of fasting. I was supposed to break my fast last night, and I decided I was going to do it here on the show with you right now here. So hang out with me as we get into the show. We'll be talking about some good things. And as we do, you know how we do it. I've got my reports. I've got my meters that we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. So let's go ahead and let me pop that over. So I've got my meters off to the side that we're going to be using. Let me get that cord out of the way that we're going to be taking a look at here in just a minute. And right below, you'll see my Dexcom Clarity report. We're going to take a look at that as well. And we're going to take a look at what I'm going to be eating here in just a while to break the fast. So I'm glad that you are here. Glad that you're in this space hanging out with me, hanging out with us as we get through the evening. So a little bit of backdrop. Right? Backdrop. So fasting is one of those tools that we've been using in the course of trying to reverse diabetes. And there are several that we've learned as we've gone through the course of our year so far. New year, new you. We've learned, of course, about fasting. the 5 whys, right? Why are we doing the things that we're doing? And these are all tools that we're putting together, tools to help us reverse diabetes. Fasting, of course, the HEAT model, emotional intelligence, medication management. All of those are things that we've been talking about on how we go about reversing diabetes. But one of the huge ones, one of the big ones, one of the major ones is this idea of fasting. And we're going to talk a little bit about the course of fasting here as we get into the show. But what I want to do, first of all, is go ahead and take a look at some of my blood sugars. We'll look at the reports. We'll get into our topic for tonight, and then we'll do our review of fasting. And you'll see here on the screen, that is my Libre, my Freestyle Libre. If you were on this morning when I did a check-in, we actually went through changing my Libre, putting it on, getting a new one there. But right now, it says that my blood sugar is 69. If I hop over and take a look at my Dexcom, Dexcom says that my blood sugar is 64 right now. And you'll see down at the bottom, the red is where I've been kind of hanging out for most of the day, or right above the red according to this. And if I look at the Libre, down at the bottom, you'll see the graph when I changed it this morning and then into the afternoon, right about maybe, I don't know, 2:30 or so. It looks like it dipped below 70 and kind of been hanging out there, right there. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hop over. We're going to take a look at my meters. I've got a Keto Mojo meter, and right here is a Contour Next. So we're going to take a look at those. So let me grab a strip for each of those. All right, so here's the strip for the Contour. Get that in there. And then, of course, the strip for the Keto Mojo. And this is a blood sugar strip because we can also do ketones, and we'll do that here in just a minute. All right, get the rest of this stuff off. And then into our trusty dandy tray, let's go ahead and grab one of these Lansing devices. And as I always say, this is a spring-loaded lancet. So you basically screw the top off there. And when I press that lever, then the spring comes out. And I'm going to do it right here so you can actually hear it. All right, hopefully you heard that. And we got a good drop of blood. Let's go ahead and drop that here. Get that going. Okay, and then also a drop for the Contour. All right, so 61 for the Keto Mojo. We've got 56 for the Contour. We've got 68 on the Freestyle Libre, and then on the Dexcom 66. So let me see. So 59, 61. Sorry, 56, 61, 66, and then 68. Okay, so they are different, but all, remember we said that they can be 20% different. So within that range, they seem to be doing okay right now. So let's go ahead and get my ketones going. Get a drop of blood on that and get that processing. All right, and then of course, as I always do, I'm going to tease you guys, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. All right, but one thing that I do want to do is we're going to hop over and let's go ahead and let's do our check-in so that we can talk about where I am. So I am now, and how many hours is it now? Let me see. So 86 hours at 4 o'clock, 86. So I'm a little over 86 right now. Okay, 86 hours of fasting. So no food since that time. I've been doing, of course, water, mostly actually unsweetened tea and unsweetened other things. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. I shouldn't say unsweetened, it's artificially sweetened. And that's going to come up in our discussion here in just a little while. But so how am I feeling? So physically, as I mentioned, I was maybe yesterday or so did not do a good job of the hydration. And so Emotionally, which we'll talk about in a little bit, was feeling some things. But as I moved around, I was doing some things in the office, lifting and bending. I did feel a little bit lightheaded as I went through that process. But in terms of energy level, it's actually pretty good. Right now, I'm not feeling any issues with energy. I'm not having any lightheadedness, dizziness, no palpitations. Actually feeling pretty good in terms of where I am. In terms of my mentation, I'm feeling pretty clear. Right, it's not feeling foggy, not feeling groggy, not feeling sluggish, which is what sometimes people will say that they do feel when they're fasting, and that both of those sometimes will be in the transition between going from burning glucose, carbohydrates, glycogen, and transitioning to ketones. So sometimes people feel that, but right now feeling pretty clear. And then emotionally, yesterday, once again, I didn't do a good job of hydrating, but today I did. I was excited to go see my doctor, which I saw today. I was doing a better job of hydration because I was off and doing some personal things. So because I was doing a good job in that process, I am in all of these categories actually are feeling pretty good right now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the rest of the show, because that's going to be something that I talk about here in just a little while. All right, so having said that, let's hop over and let's begin our discussion. So, sugar cravings. And actually, I guess we should talk about cravings in general, but specifically those sugar cravings, because those are the ones that tend to cause us some angst, right? And let me do something here really quickly, y'all. I want to do something really quick because it looks like my Instagram currently is having an issue. So let me do something really quickly. I want to get that over because I can go back and faster review tips. All right, so we'll do that. If you are out there on and you don't see someone on Instagram, hey, let them know that we're on our way. We're coming in just a minute, and let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can get this done. If not, we'll just go ahead and continue as we are. Let's see if I can add. I'm going to try to add the Instagram. Hopefully this does not cause us an issue. All right. Okay, so we should still be in Instagram. The folks over at Instagram should be seeing us. Should now be seeing us. If you're not, please let us know. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. All right, so we've cravings. So cravings are the things that sometimes will derail us. And when we talk about cravings, one of the places where cravings come in is with the HEAT model. You guys will remember that that's one of the models that we have been talking about. The HEAT model, those things that push us off of our eating plan. Those are habits, emotions, access, and taste. We'll talk about that again. But specifically cravings, and this gets tied into our discussion of what is the difference between appetite and appetite and hunger. What's the difference between appetite and hunger? And often people will say, my appetite is big, my appetite is large, my body needs energy. And actually, that is not hunger. That's the appetite really doesn't tell you anything about what your body needs. It just tells you what's going on up here, right? Because the appetite or the hunger is a physical need for food. That is, my body says, I need food right now because I need energy for a particular thing. Appetite is, Aunt Sue makes that delicious cake and I can't wait to get there so I can have some. Or it's Christmas time, or it's Thanksgiving, or it's New Year's, and there's that thing that I normally have, and I can't wait to get there. In fact, today as I was getting ready to come on, I went into the kitchen and I was putting together what I was going to use to break the fast, and the smells. My son was in there; he's getting something to eat, and those smells were just so intense that it was all I could do to not grab something and put it in my mouth. So it was not the hunger; it was the appetite, because I was anticipating what that tasted like. Okay. So what we're talking about today is how does fasting help with appetite? How does fasting help with appetite? And there are several things that we're going to go through. The power of fasting. What is the power of fasting in terms of appetite? And what does fasting do when it comes to appetite? Number one, it stabilizes blood sugar levels. We'll go through that. Number two, improves insulin sensitivity. It regulates our hormones. It resets our taste preferences. And it reduces the dependence on glucose. Right? So that's where we're heading. We're going to talk through each of those. So about the mechanisms of how this works. So stabilizing blood sugar. How does fasting stabilize blood sugar? It helps to maintain consistent energy levels, and it reduces rapid spikes in blood sugars and crashes. So fasting helps to stabilize blood sugar levels by reducing the frequency of eating. And we've talked about this before, and you've heard me say that when we are eating, we're still putting food in. And whenever we put food in, unless you're eating like all meat or all protein, in nature, it's very difficult to find all protein, because protein is typically coupled with fat, typically coupled with carbohydrates, unless you're eating meat. Okay, so let's just say that. So unless you're eating meat, and it's not fried, battered, and all those things where you add carbs to it, then it's very difficult to just have pure protein. So anytime you're eating, you're putting something in that has carbohydrates in it. And with carbohydrates, you will get a spike in insulin. And this is a difficult one sometimes for people to get, because it doesn't matter how much carb is in that food. As long as there is a carb, then your insulin level will spike up. Right, you will get a spike in blood sugar. I guess let me start there. You will get a spike in blood sugar, and if the spike in blood sugar happens, you will get an increase in your insulin. That's the difference between fasting and reducing your calories or reducing the carbs. When we're reducing the carbs, we're still putting things in that can cause a spike in blood sugar. When we are fasting, there is no food going in. There is nothing going in, and so we don't get a spike in blood sugar, and we don't get a spike in insulin. Okay? So when we're fasting, we're minimizing rapid spikes, we're minimizing crashes, because once insulin comes out, it's going to bring that blood sugar down. So we're not getting those ups and downs. This helps to stabilize the blood sugar and prevents what's called reactive hypoglycemia or reactive drops. Some people will say that when they're eating, right, and it depends on what they're eating, they will feel their blood sugar going up and down. But when we're fasting, we don't have that, because there's nothing going in at all. And so during that time, there is no up and down of blood sugar. The other thing that fasting does during the fasting process, we get what's called gluconeogenesis. So during the fast, the body begins to produce glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, like amino acids from the protein. When we break down fat in order to use that for ketones, during that process, the fat and I need to create a model so I can show you guys. But when we talk about fat, what we're talking about actually is free fatty acids or triglycerides. And that triglyceride, so there are 3 fatty acids that are floating around attached to what's called a glycerol backbone. And so the fatty acids get turned into ketones, but the glycerol, that backbone, gets turned into sugar. So that's why even though someone is fasting for an extended period of time, their blood sugar doesn't go to zero because the body is still able to make sugar from the glycerol part of the glycerol part of the triglycerides. Okay. All right. So stabilizing blood sugar. That's number one. That's how one of the things that fasting does to help. Number two, it helps to improve our insulin sensitivity. How does that happen? Well, when you're fasting during that period, it allows the insulin levels to go down. We've reduced the amount of sugar that's there. We have reduced the amount of insulin that our body has to produce, or the amount of insulin that we have to take from outside. This helps to reset the insulin receptors, because one of the ideas behind insulin resistance is that there is so much insulin that is bombarding the cell. And the cell, in order to protect itself, has decreased the amount of insulin receptors that it produces, so that it can't handle them, right? It's almost like here's one. So when my son was young, we would go to church, and there would be these loud noises, and so we would take him away. One time, I think he went running down the aisle, going back to the back of the church. But sometimes what we've done, like we've gone to those monster truck places, and so you put headphones on, right, or put earplugs in, and it's the same thing. So what has happened, because the insulin level is so high, and all that insulin is trying to get to the cell says, I don't like that, and so basically what it does is it puts a protective coat. It puts a regulator, and it regulates by downgrading the amount of insulin receptors so that the insulin can't get to it. It's almost like putting those headphones on. And so during the process of fasting, because we're not putting in sugar, we're not getting those spikes, and so the insulin level drops. And so the cell actually becomes more sensitive to the use of insulin that's there. And that's one of the ideas, right? When we talk about the pillars of reversing diabetes, it is decrease insulin, suppress appetite, and reduce sugar, right? And so here's a way of reducing insulin by improving insulin sensitivity. So that's number two. And the third way, it regulates hormone. We're talking about how fasting will help with cravings. So it helps to regulate hormones. And there are three hormones, two hormones that we've been talking about. So insulin and glucagon. And I think we have lost my picture. So let's go over, and I'm going to, in a minute, hopefully you can still hear me. And then you can see me. Well, you can see more than me. Let's see. Behind the scene. Okay. So this is me right here, y'all. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move my mic while that comes back. So right now, you guys should still see me. You should still hear me. So when we talk about hormones, we've been talking about insulin, and we've been talking about glucagon. Insulin and glucagon are the two hormones that we talk about mostly, but there are several other hormones. There is ghrelin, there's leptin, there's serotonin, and there's dopamine. So all of those hormones can be regulated. So ghrelin and leptin are the hunger and satiety hormones, respectively. So ghrelin makes you think you're hungry, and leptin makes you think you're full. So when we're fasting during that process, the fasting causes those blood sugars to go down. And when the blood sugar goes down, then insulin goes down. In that process, it helps to reset our body's ability to sense ghrelin and leptin, so that our ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, actually goes down, and our leptin actually can be stimulated, and so it goes up. So our body thinks we're more satisfied and that we're not hungry, right? So satisfaction goes up and hunger goes down, or satiety goes up and hunger goes down, okay? So let's hop back over here and let's see if see if we can get our other camera back on. I gotta go over here. And let's see if that came back. And it looks like it did. So voila, here we are. Hey, that's what happened on the live, right? That's why I love this. Okay, so fasting helps to balance ghrelin and leptin, so the hunger and the satiety hormone. So ghrelin decreases after fasting, and that reduces our hunger. And then leptin levels are enhanced, so the feeling of fullness is there, right? So I'm full and I'm not hungry. So those two hormones. The other hormones that get regulated are dopamine and serotonin. So dopamine is that feel good, that anticipatory hormone, right? So it is the oh, I can't wait to get that thing because it tastes so good, right? That's dopamine. Or I can't wait to see that person because they make me feel good. I can't wait to go to that place because I have a memory of it. Right? So dopamine and then serotonin, they drive that pleasure center. So when we eat certain things, right, the bliss point, the perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat, when we eat it, we get that enhancement. And so we get that pleasure. And so not insulin, but fasting helps to regulate that so that that anticipation is not as intense. And then it also helps to regulate cortisol and growth hormone, right? So fasting can increase growth hormone levels, and that's why people say during fasting you get muscles, because growth hormone is one of the things that helps to maintain muscle mass. Okay, so fasting can increase growth hormone levels, and this helps with metabolism. It helps with muscle preservation, and cortisol will be mobilized, right? So while cortisol helps to mobilize energy. So during fasting, in those initial phases, your cortisol level actually can go up because it is anticipating that fasting is a sort of stress on the body. So that will enhance the body's ability to regulate energy. So the body says, I've got to go now and find energy. And where do you think it goes? It goes to those fat cells. Okay? All right. So that's one of the ways that it does it. And then, so it regulates the hormones. And then it resets our taste preferences. So prolonged fasting reduces exposure to sweet foods. It helps to reset the taste buds and decrease the preference for highly processed sugary foods. Yep. There you go. Right? So because when you're not eating, you're going for longer and longer periods where you're not putting in sweet and sugary foods. Right? So as the body adapts to lower sugar diet, and this is what happens. Let me come over to this one and talk to you. So a lot of times when people change their diet, after they've been on a certain diet for a while, when they go back to having things that are highly sugary, then they say, man, that tastes super sweet. Because what's happened? They've reset their taste buds. Back last year or the year before, and actually still on our channel, on our website, is our Sugar Busters course. And one of the processes that we go through in that course is how do we reset the taste buds? So when we're fasting, because you're going for longer periods of not having sugary, highly processed foods, then your taste buds become more sensitive and they adapt to that lower sugar. And the sensitivity to natural sweetness or whole foods like fruits can increase. And that makes them more satisfying. And it reduces the cravings for refined sugar. Okay, so resets those taste buds. And then fasting reduces the dependency on glucose. It reduces the dependency on glucose because one of the things that we've talked about is this transition from carbohydrate burning to burning ketones or burning fat to produce ketones. So during fasting, the body shifts, kind of like that hybrid car, from using glucose as its primary source of energy, and now it begins using ketones that come from fat. And this switch reduces the body's reliance on glucose. And so there's this thing called keto adapting. So when you first start fasting, when you first are in the initial process of learning how to fast, the body takes a long time to switch from glucose over to ketones. So even though you've been fasting, those initial times when you start fasting, your ketones are still low. But after a while, after you've been doing it and the body says, okay, we know what's going on now, we know we're about to start fasting or we are in the fasting process, it switches over. Right? So that metabolic switch, it reduces the body's reliance on glucose and lowers the frequency of sugary cravings. So this fat adaptation. So as the body becomes more efficient at burning fat for energy, the need for glucose decreases and cravings also decrease for those quick sugars that we get. Right, and that's what it does is right. What the sugar, it comes in and it goes up, and we get that spike, we get that energy, but then it crashes. Right. So, what are some practical tips? What are some practical tips for stabilizing blood sugar in fasting, or tips for reducing the cravings with fasting? Number one, you want to start with an intermittent fast. Now, we've asked here on the channel for you to work your way up to be able to fast for a 24-hour period. And this is a way of doing that. So intermittent fasting simply means that there's a portion of the day where you're not eating. And so you start with maybe an 8-16. So fast for 8 hours, eat for 16 hours within a 16-hour window. Then you go to 12 to 12. So you fast for 12 hours, eat during a 12-hour window. And then you go to 16-8, where you fast for 16 hours and then you eat for 8 hours, which actually is the most common type of intermittent fasting. And then some people have gone to simply doing a one meal a day. Right, which is kind of a 23-hour, 23-1, I guess. Right, so begin slow. So intermittent fasting. Improve insulin sensitivity. So you want to incorporate regular fasting periods. That's why we say, hey, let's fast for once a week, because we're getting used to that. So during that process, our body's becoming sensitive to insulin. One of the pillars is to decrease insulin. And so those receptors become more efficient. Right? Next, you want to eat, you want to stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. As you heard me say earlier in one of the check-ins, or even today, is I was having some symptoms because I was not remaining hydrated. And if you're not hydrated, then fasting can be a difficult process. Right? So remain hydrated. And then when you are eating during your non-fasting window, you want to eat nutrient-dense foods. Those are those foods. Those are those foods that are not highly processed, highly refined, but are full of vitamins and minerals and fiber and fluid and all those things that we talk about. Because if you eat calorie-dense foods, then that sets you up for remaining in the craving cycle. Okay? Avoid artificial sweeteners. Now, this is where I said that we would talk about it, because most of the things I drink during the course of fasting are artificially sweetened. Okay, I'm going to just tell you. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm drinking right now. Okay? When I'm not fasting, my wife can probably tell you when I've started drinking artificially sweetened stuff, because I'm in the refrigerator and there's that craving, right? So you've got to know yourself. What do these things do for you? But avoid artificial sweeteners, because they make you hungry. So people ask me all the time during the course of diabetes treatment, hey, can I use this artificially sweetened thing? And I said, you can, because it's great for the blood sugar, but it does make you hungry. And so later on, even though blood sugar is great, you end up eating a lot more because the hunger is there and the craving is there. So it stimulates the appetite. So avoid Avoid artificial sweeteners, right? Incorporate healthy fats and lean protein. And this is a good one because the healthy fats and protein, they blunt, this is during the eating period, by the way, they blunt the rise in blood sugar. And so it decreases the spike. And if we decrease the spike, then the insulin goes down. And remember, insulin is an appetite stimulant. And so if we're blunting, if we're decreasing the absorption of the sugar, then we don't have that big issue with spiking of blood sugar, and we don't have that big issue of cravings. All right? And then we want to practice mindful eating. Practice mindful eating. In the course of eating, as you are fasting, right, in those fasting periods, now when you start eating, you want to spend more time in the eating process. Often we rush through food because we're busy doing something else. In fact, sometimes we sit at the table eating while we're doing our phones, while we're watching TV, while we're reading a book, while we're doing something else. But mindful eating says, I am right now in this space, I am concentrated on what I'm eating. I'm enjoying the textures. I'm enjoying the flavors. I'm enjoying the sensation of eating. I'm enjoying the process of being here with the family in this eating posture, right? So mindful eating. So practice mindful eating. Make sense so far? Yes, I hope. Right? So the pillars of our reversing diabetes: decrease insulin, suppress appetite, get rid of sugar or reduce sugar. Okay. So during the process of fasting, you want to make sure that you are also monitoring blood sugars. All of this is with the intention of making sure that we're staying safe, that we're seeing what's going on before, what's going on in our bodies after we're fasting. Okay, so let's hop over now and let's talk about actual fasting, right? So those are the things that we do to reduce the cravings of fasting. Let's go and let's talk about fasting, right? So fasting review, what do you need to know? What do you need to know about fasting? And as I get into fasting, I always have to say that I break fasting up into basically 3 different phases. There is what we do to prepare for the fast, how we get through the fast, and then, of course, how we break the fast. Prepare for the fast, get through the fast, and that's right, break the fast. So preparing for the fast is very, very important. And there are 4 things I usually talk about here. Number 1, you want to make sure that you are well rested. If you are not rested, then it makes the fasting very difficult, because you're going to have drops in energy as a course for some people as the body transitions from burning sugar to burning ketones. And if you are already not rested, then you're going to see that as a weakness, weakness, not tiredness. You're going to see it as weakness, and you're going to say the fasting is causing a problem. It's not the fasting is causing a problem. You're already exhausted. You're already tired. And so add on top of that now that transition between the 2 types of energy, and you can feel that as a difficulty, okay? So number 1, make sure that you are well rested. Number 2, make sure you're hydrated. Because once again, if you're not hydrated, that sets you up for difficulty during the fast. As I mentioned just a little while ago, in my office, I was not doing a good job of hydrating yesterday. And so by the end of the day, one of my team members says, hey, you're Dr. Woode, are you okay? You're a little bit more grouchy than normal. Okay. So make sure you're remaining hydrated. Number 3, make sure that during your non-fasting days that you are eating nutrient-dense foods, so that during the fast, you're not having difficulty with, first of all, fluids, right? Hydration, with electrolytes, with vitamins and minerals. So make sure that during the non-fasting periods that you are being careful to have nutrient-dense foods. And then make sure that you are not coming out of or going into a stressful time. If you're coming out from a very stressful time, your cortisol levels are going to be high. If you're going into a stressful time, your cortisol levels are going to be high, and those will push us in a direction that we don't want to go, right? So cortisol helps, or cortisol is an energy grabber. And where does it get energy from? It creates sugar. It also can make us jittery. It can make us feel anxious, right? So all of the feelings that you feel when you're afraid are the same feelings that you feel when you are anticipating something, are the same feelings you can feel as you get into fasting. And often people can't tell the difference, and they think that there's something wrong, and they break the fast or they interrupt the fast prematurely. So try as best as you can not to go into or come out of a stressful situation right before you're starting a fast, particularly if you're starting an extended fast. Okay? So preparing, very, very important. So preparing for the fast. And then getting into the fast, right? And this one, we usually break it down into 3 phases, right? 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. But here, we're going to break it down a little bit more finely. We're going to talk about the first 6 hours, and then we'll go on. So the first 6 hours are called the postprandial phase. And this is where the body is still actually absorbing, right? You've just eaten the food. You've stopped eating, you're not putting anything in, and the body is still in the process of breaking down the food, absorbing the nutrients. The glucose levels are high, the insulin is coming out because it's now got to deal with the sugar that comes from the food that you just ate. Right? Energy levels are high because we've got this ready source of sugar, carbohydrates that are right there. That's the first 0 to 6 hours after eating. 6 to 12 hours now, this is the early fasting stage. And so insulin levels are starting to decrease and glucagon levels are coming up. Remember we said that they are opposite hormones. When insulin is high, glucagon is low. When insulin is low, glucagon is high. So as insulin is going down, glucagon is coming out, and that signals the liver to begin the process of taking of doing gluconeogenesis, taking that stored sugar that's in the liver and converting it to glucose. So that's how that liver storage begins to get used up. So the body is signaling, hey liver, my blood sugars are going down because we've not eaten now for 6 to 12 hours. Go to the liver and begin using up some of the glycogen that's there. Now, here's a thing, and let me pause here to say, if your blood sugars are already high, so you've eaten something and the blood sugars are high, the body doesn't have to go to the liver to break down glycogen. It doesn't have to do gluconeogenesis because the blood sugars are already high. There's already sugar in the blood floating around. It's not until that blood sugar begins to drop that the body then now has to go to the liver to get sugar from the liver. So even though we say that at 24 hours, the glycogen in the liver is gone, it depends on your metabolism. It depends on what's going on in your body. So if your blood sugars are 500, your body's not going to the liver to get any glycogen. So it's not until that 500 comes down that we now have to go to the liver. So as you are fasting over those first whatever number of hours, number of days maybe, until the body uses up the sugar that's floating around in your blood, then it goes to the liver and tries to get the glycogen that's there. Okay, so I wanted to make that point because there's some people who say, wait, I've been fasting for 2 days and my blood sugar is still elevated. I mean, I'm not losing weight. Well, you're not losing weight because your blood sugar is elevated and the body does not have to go to the liver to get glycogen, right? But in that process, glycogenolysis is happening, is breaking that down, converting it to glucose, and the energy levels here can begin to fluctuate because we're starting to use up some of the glycogen, we're starting to use up some of that sugar, and the body's now having to begin thinking about, okay, hey, what else do I do? Okay, so that's 6 to 12 hours. As we move to 12 to 16 hours, this is the transition to using fat. So we're not all the way over in the ketosis, and we're not all the way now in using glucose, but we're right there in the middle where the body's having to begin making a decision. So glucose levels continue to go down, right, prompting the increase to fatty acid release that comes from the fat stores. So glycogen is being broken down and it's starting to wane, and the body's now saying, hey, we need to find another source, right? So the liver starts gluconeogenesis from non-glucose containing material. So now it's starting to look for other things. It's starting to look for fat. It's starting to look for protein. Now, here's a point, and I love all these points, because people will say, hey, we're losing protein, we're losing muscle. Well, yes, you are losing muscle, but you're losing a lot more fat relative to the muscle that you're losing, or protein that you're losing. And so energy may feel, you may feel a dip in energy right now. You may get some irritability in those first hours, and your hunger, right, may kick in, because your brain is now having to, okay, oh, it's 12 o'clock. Oh, I normally eat at this time. Oh, it's noon. I normally eat at this time. Oh, it's supper time. I normally eat at this time. Oh, I smell that thing. So, oh, I'm hungry, right? So you begin to feel that, and you begin to sense some of that. As we move beyond the 18 hours, 18 to 24 hours, now ketosis is beginning, because the glycogen stores in the liver are depleted or nearing depletion, right? And this leads to the increase in ketosis that comes from the fat that the body's breaking down. Remember, it's breaking down the free fatty acids to create ketones, but it also has that glycerol backbone that also makes sugar. So that's why blood sugars don't go crazy going down as everybody would expect to happen if I'm not fasting. Autophagy begins. Remember, autophagy is that period during which the body is reclaiming, recycling, rebuilding, right? That's an amazing process that we love when autophagy begins, because it is beginning to heal the body, beginning to clean the body. All those damaged, unused cancer cells, broken cells, all of those cells are now being scavenged, kind of like the Pac-Man, being eaten up, and they're being converted to better, newer, healthier parts of the body. Kind of like taking, when you do recycling, you take those old newspapers, old cardboard boxes, old cans, and you make something else out of them. That's what the body is doing during the autophagy process. Okay? And so the initial stages of mental clarity can be seen here, because the body has switched. The brain is now using ketones. And we get that mental clarity that people talk about as it comes on over this process. Okay, so 24 hours. That's the key. Ketosis begins, right? Ketosis begins. So glycogen stores, like I said, are near depletion, and we begin to see some other things that are going on in the body. All right, so 24 to 36 hours. This is fat adaptation. Let me back up, sorry. So fat adaptation. So you got significant increase in ketones now, because the body is in full gear. It's like, hey, we're there. Glycogen is gone. We need to be in full process of burning fat. And so we see fat oxidation happens. And so free fatty acids are floating around. We're getting more ketones. And that's when you see, when I look at my ketone monitor, you see those ketones, they're going from 0.5 to 0.6 to 0.8 to 1.2 to 2.3 and so forth. Okay? Because our body is now in full ketosis mode. And our energy levels begin to stabilize. Because now we've moved from burning gas, like that hybrid car. We're no longer burning gas, we're burning the battery now. And so we've moved from burning sugar, and we are now in full force of burning fat for ketones. So preparing for the fast, getting through the fast, and then we'll talk here in just a minute about the process of breaking the fast, and we'll see what I'm going to use here in just a minute. I do want to hop over, and I see one of our community members hopped in. So Steve, hey man, thank you for coming through and hanging out with us. So Steve was with us this morning. He was with us last night. He's with us here today again. So Steve, always excited when I see you, man, and really appreciate and excited about all the things that we're seeing in the community for Steve, the successes that he's having, and Teresa and Jennifer, who was on earlier, and all the things that we're seeing. Just excited for the community. So if you're out there, if you've been fasting, go ahead and drop that in the comment. Tell me how long you've been fasting, And if you've had some other successes, as we talk about, this is not just for fasting and blood sugar. It is for metabolic disease. So here on the channel, we are focusing on reversing diabetes, but the things that we do, the fasting, the tools that we learn will help with all of the metabolic diseases: hypertension, hyperlipidemia, coronary artery disease, polycystic ovarian syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and on and on and on and on. And even as we are talking to people who are struggling with some cancers and neuropathy and neurodegenerative diseases. Right, we did a show probably 2-3 weeks ago where we did a check-in where we talked about neurodegenerative diseases. That's Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and ALS and all of those. So go back and make sure you take a look at that show. Awesome. All right, so that's the process of preparing for the fast, the process of getting into the fast, getting through the fast. And when we break the fast, we want to make sure that we are doing that in a safe and a successful way as well, because the way you break a fast can determine the success of the fast. So getting out of the fast is just as important as getting into and going through the fast. So when we break the fast, we want to be mindful, right? So here are some tips. You want to monitor your blood sugars, because we don't want those big spikes. So the things that you're eating will dictate what happens to your blood sugar. So make sure you're monitoring them. One of the reasons I make sure that I have my glucose monitors. You want to make sure that you are having appropriate portion control, portion sizes. I have to tell you that I've got to be very careful for that, because when I think about the things that I break the fast with, I'm like, oh, that's healthy. So I can just, right? So we tend to end up eating a lot more of those things that we think are healthy. So you just have to be careful, be mindful. That mindful eating, very, very important. Eat slowly. Eat slowly. Sometimes when we come out of the fast, we want to just throw it in. We want to shovel it in, but be mindful. Be excited about the food. Be thoughtful about the food. Eat slowly. Avoid sugary and processed foods, which we've talked about here. And the reason for that is once you get that spike in sugar, the insulin has to come out. And when you get a spike in insulin, it is hard. I can attest to that it is hard to step back from that. Once that insulin gets up, I felt that all last week as I was going through, as we were down in Tampa, and I'm going to pop that up again. So these are the things that I was eating. And as I was eating these, and my blood sugar went up, I struggled over the course of toward the end of that week, because I'd allowed my blood sugars to get so high that the insulin was ravaging, and the insulin that my body was producing, right? So you want to be careful as you're getting into breaking the fast. And then you want to make sure you're hydrated. Hydration, always important, pre-fast, during the fast, and after the fast. Several things you can use as you're breaking the fast: water, herbal tea, coconut water, that's the unsweetened one, right? Any of those would be beneficial. I have coconut water on there, but it would probably be the last thing on the list of the three, right? So water, then herbal teas, coconut water, and I continue to drink, my artificially sweetened, that's right, artificially sweetened beverages. Next, you want to make sure that you're using protein. So eggs, chicken, turkey breast, tofu, tempeh, any of those would be good to have as proteins that you can use to break. And I didn't show you, but here on my plate, see, where's my scene that shows you that? Here on my plate, I've got some things that we're gonna be breaking my fast with. I'm gonna eat those here in just a little while. I may abstain from these. These are nuts, but you'll see this is some of the same stuff I had last night because I did not eat it because I decided not to break the fast at the time. All right, so you want to make sure that you're having some good protein. And remember, protein and fats, they will blunt the spike in blood sugar. They will help you feel satiated. That is, they will help you not feel as hungry. So you want to make sure that as you're eating, as you're breaking the fast, that you're having some good protein. And then healthy fats, avocados, nuts, seeds, all of those would be beneficial for you. Okay. And then just some tips. Just some tips on broths. So you can use broths to break the fast. Vegetable broth, bone broth, any of those would be beneficial. As we've done here, you've seen me use broth several times to break the fast. And then just make sure that you are, when you're breaking the fast, that you choose foods that help maintain stable blood glucose levels while offering nutritional value and are gentle on the digestive systems. You want to focus on low glycemic index foods, and low glycemic index foods are those foods that have glycemic index less than or 50 or less. You want to do lean proteins, healthy fats, and you want to make sure that you are remaining hydrated. Awesome. All right, so let's hop over and let's take a look, because we have not seen yet what my ketones are. All right, so 83 hours, 84 hours, 85 hours, maybe now. So let's go ahead and see what my ketones are. And let's push that over there a little bit. Get it out of the scene. Well, not good enough, but that's okay. There we go. So here's my Keto Mojo. I'm going to go ahead and pop that out. And then on my phone, let's go over to the app. Go ahead and turn this on. And then it should begin syncing there in just a minute. We'll see. What do you think my ketones are? So 83 hours. 83 hours of fasting. Let's see if... All right, so 61 was my glucose, and my ketones are 2.9. So remember, as we talk about ketones that are less than 0.5 are considered normal, 0.5 to 1.5 considered nutritional ketosis, and then above 1.5 considered therapeutic ketosis. If we look at my Keto Mojo app and go ahead and look at the actual graphs, the tan line, that's blood sugar, and then the turquoise line, that's ketone. And so as my blood sugar has gone down, right, my insulin has gone down. As insulin goes down, ketones will come out, because insulin and ketones can't coexist. And my blood sugar, as it stays low, my ketones continue to go up. So we started over here. Let's see, where were we? 0.6. Actually, we were before that. Before that, we were down at almost 0, I think. So, 0. And then we went to 0.6 as we got into the fast. So that was, I think, 23 hours, maybe 23, 24 hours. And then 1.9. And then 2.4. And then, of course, now 2.9. There you go. All right. And so one of the things that I try to do is I try to maintain some ketosis even as I get out of the fast, because as long as I'm in ketosis, then my body still continues to burn fat for energy. So that's the whole idea behind the ketogenic diet. It is a diet. It is you eating food and still trying to remain in ketosis. And I tell people to know that you're in ketosis, you have to check. You can't just guess. So if you're eating food, there's no way to know if you're in ketosis unless you're checking, either with a ketone meter, or you're dipping your urine, or using one of the breath ketone monitors. Okay, and so Steve says that he checked his ketones and they are 1.5. All right, so we're still in ketosis. I think Steve, this morning it was 1.7 maybe, if I remember correctly. Okay. All right, so 1.5 for him. So that is where our ketones are. I want to go over and we're going to take a look at my monitor here, my report. If you've not done so this past week, on our show on Monday at 7 o'clock, we talked about diet and exercise. How do diet and exercise work? That's a very important conversation as we're talking about reversing diabetes, as we're talking about improving our metabolic disease, improving our metabolic health. So if you've not done so yet, go ahead and make sure you get over and watch that. And then let's go and take a look at our. Let's take a look at our blood sugars. And I'm trying to find my scene, but that's okay. I think this is it. Here we go. All right. Yes. And so blood sugars, this is my report. This is a 14-day report. And you see that my average blood sugar is 126. And it's 126 because the last week and a half has been anniversary, birthday, Tampa, Florida visit, right? All of those things will, have shown up here as that 126 average. Normally, if you recall, we're usually down at the 110s, 109s, or something like that. But right now, 126 is the average blood sugar. I'm in range 83% of the time, and the target is anywhere from 70 to 180. Our ketone management indicator is 6.3. So if I were to get an A1C based on this number, it would be 6.3. If I look at my 90-day average, and I saw my doctor today, and we talked about my 90-day average, and I'll have to do a show where we show you my A1C. I think it was 6.0. 107 is my average for 90 days with a ketone management indicator of 5.9, in target 89% of the time. And then let's look at our daily graphs. And that's coming up here in just a minute. And we'll see what my blood sugar has been doing over the course of the time that I've been fasting. So let's go back. And so we started fasting right here. Right, so we're in the 100, 140. We spiked up because of what we ate right before we started the fast. And then over the course of the rest of that day, blood sugars continue to drop down to 90s. And then 24 hours later, we're starting out in the 90s. And we kind of hovered 90s over 100, 110, 110s over the course of that entire day. So that's 24 hours right here. And then going through that day brings us to 48 hours. And now we're in the 100s and below, right? So we do spike up a little bit here in the 101s, 102, 103. But for the rest of that day, we're down. And then, so that's 24 hours, 48 hours. And now we get it into 72 hours. Okay. And we're in the 60s and 70s, down into the 50s in some cases. And then at 83 hours, 83, 84 hours, now the blood sugars are in the 60s, right? So below 70. And so we're going to end the fast here in just a little while, and you'll see what I'm eating as I get there. Okay? So that's what's been going on in terms of blood sugar. Now, in terms of what I'm eating, let's see. All right, you guys saw that I've got some cheese. So this is Parmesan, smoked Gouda. This is sharp cheddar, extra sharp. This is from Chick-fil-A. Those are the grilled nuggets. And then here is my bowl of nuts. So I think I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start here with, I'm going to start with some cheese. And I love cheese. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually start with the chicken. I started with the chicken because the cheese, even though it has lots of protein, does have carbs, right? That's good. Now, it's been sitting there while we did the show, so it's not hot. It's a little firm, but hey, you know what? That's okay. Love it. And bring it over this way. Wow, 84 hours. And let me see, what is my blood sugar right now? blood sugar is 70. Isn't that amazing? That after 83, 84 hours of eating, of not eating, the blood sugar is not 0. Let's see what the, yeah, it's not 0. Delicious. So what do you normally, when you fast, what do you normally break your fast with? Drop that in the comments. Let us know. So I'm going to try to maintain some ketosis as I get into the rest of this evening and perhaps tomorrow. Now, I can usually go for about 8 to 12 hours and still remain with ketones above 0.5. And that's because I'm not really trying to stay in ketosis longer. I just want to extend my ketosis as long as possible after eating. But usually when I start eating, I go back to eating, I don't want to say a regular meal, but for lack of a better phrase, regular meal. So I'm not restricting my carbs. I'm not doing a ketogenic diet. Now, some people will couple ketogenic diet with fasting. Great idea. Some people will couple intermittent fasting with extended fasting. That's what I do. So I do a 16-8 sometimes, maybe sometimes a 24-hour or 23-hour where I eat one meal a day, OMAD. Some people will do alternate day fasting, time restricted. So what, Mediterranean diet with fasting. However you put it together, as long as it's working, as long as you're remaining safe, that's amazing. For me, on my non-fasting, and when I say non-fasting, my non-extended fasting day, because I do intermittent fasting on the other days, I eat typically 1 to 2 meals per day. And so I'm not restricting during that time. I'm very mindful of what I'm eating so that I'm not going overboard. But during that time, I'm pretty much eating a normal meal. Normal for us, right? And we've defined what normal is. Okay, delicious. I'm gonna have to get some more of that. Okay, now if you're vegetarian, there are still things there. I shouldn't say not still things. There are things that you can eat that will help you with ketosis and remaining in ketosis. Some of the things that you will eat will have carbs in them. Many of the things, right, will have carbohydrates. But that's okay because you're not avoiding carbs. You're just trying to minimize those carbs. And you still see my blood sugar there on the screen. That's my report. This is so good, y'all. All right. Let me get that out. And then we can talk. So, our goal is to reverse diabetes. Beyond that, our goal is to improve metabolic health. That's what we want to do. That's where we're heading. And so we use fasting as a way of minimizing our cravings. We've talked about those tips. And so as we kind of move into winding down, so here's some conclusions. Fasting can be a powerful tool to reduce sugar cravings. And we talked about why. because you don't have those spikes in blood sugar. Insulin doesn't come out, and so we don't have that. It stabilizes blood sugar and improves insulin sensitivity, because during the process of fasting, blood sugars are going down, insulin is going down, the cells are becoming more receptive to the insulin that your body's making. And it regulates hunger hormones and resets the taste palates or taste preferences. Resets the hunger hormones and our taste gets better. Okay? So those are some of the benefits of fasting and how fasting helps to reduce cravings that we have. And cravings are a big thing that many of us struggle with. I'm putting myself in that category as part of the struggle. All right. So Steve said he broke it tonight with pork ribs, cabbage, avocado, artichoke heads, artichoke hearts, and peach. No barbecue sauce on the ribs. Okay. Very good, Steve. And so how many hours after eating was the ketone of 1.5? Or was that at the beginning of eating? All right, so how many hours after eating did you get that? All right. So, everybody, I want you to listen to me. I want to talk to you about your unlimited potential. Right now, at your fingertips, you have the potential to change your metabolic life. You have the unlimited potential to improve your health, to do a great job for wellness. You have the potential for reversing your diabetes. I'm talking about adults with type 2 diabetes. You have the potential by education, encouragement, and empowerment. That's what we do here on the show. We educate with the shows that we do, the blogs, the podcasts. All of that is with intention of changing your mind, making a mindset shift, reframing. In order to change, you've got to understand. In order to change, you've got to know where you are, and that's what education is. And then we empower by encouraging you to learn the tools that we've learned, that we've been putting through. Right? The tools that we are. That's the empowerment. Don't just let this stuff be on the shelf. You got to pick them up and you've got to use them, get involved. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. And then we encourage. We encourage through the community that Steve is a part of and all the other people that you see coming on and talking about the successes that they've had. We educate, we empower, and we encourage. That is the triple E formula for success. The things that will derail us, in addition to the cravings, or the cravings actually fall into the category of habits, emotions, access, and taste. The things that will derail us, that push us, these are the triggers, the habits that we form, those routines where we eat not because we're hungry, but we eat because it's the time to eat. We eat because we see other people eat. We eat because there's this function where we always eat. And then emotions. We're happy, we're sad, we're depressed, we're frustrated, we're mad, we are bored, we're tired. All of those emotions will push through the desire, push through the decision that we've made to not eat something. And then we eat because of access. Things are just around. One of the reasons I don't normally bring nuts in the house is because when they're here, I'm going to eat them. Because my brain says, oh, those are healthy. Let's have them, right? We eat just because it's there. You walk by the pantry, you walk by your coworker's desk, and there's something on their table, and you grab a candy, you grab a cookie, you grab a bar, you walk by the break room at work, and there it is, and you grab it, not because you're hungry, but just because it's there. And we eat because of taste. And our taste buds are conditioned, right? The perfect combination of fat, sugar, and salt. When you eat it, you just can't have one. And we're never chasing the food, but we're always chasing what the food does for us. The calm that it brings over us. The memory that it takes us to. That time when we went to that place with that person and we had that thing and it makes us feel that way. Right? I tell the story about my dad. Right? So when I go to New York, I eat hot dogs, pizza, and Chinese food. Always. Why? Because it connects me to my dad. It reminds me of the time when we were there, when he would get us hot dogs, pizza, and Chinese food. So with the HEAT model, habits, emotions, access, and taste. And then our call to action is this: join the challenges here on the channel. Every month we have a challenge. Be a part of it. Don't just let the shows go by and you listen to them and you put them back on the shelf, but join the challenges. Every month we have a challenge, and the challenges have been amazing. Now in January, what's your why? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why do you want to be healthy? What's the goal? Is it a weight loss goal? Is it a blood sugar goal? Is it an A1C goal? Is it, hey, I'm getting ready to retire and I need to lose some weight so that we can go on the trip? Or my granddaughter is getting ready to get married. I want to be able to walk down the aisle. I want to be able to fit in that dress. I want, whatever it is. What is your why? What's your reason? And then in February, work your way up to be able to fast for a 24-hour period. When we talk about ways to use fasting to help with the cravings, begin where you are. But the goal is to work your way up to be able to fast 24 hours once a week. Beyond that, we'll talk about other things, some more extended fasting, but that's the first thing. And then in the month of March, what is your trigger? Is it a habit, emotion, access, or taste? I'll tell you, for me, there are three of them: emotions, access, and taste. Eat. I took the H off. Say EAT. Those are the things that drive me. That was in the month of February, month of March. If you are able to know, if you're able to understand emotional intelligence, self-awareness, being able to know what your trigger is, then you are much more able to manage it. In April, it was learn how to create a meal that minimized processing, whole foods, not any added sugar, lean, starchy and non-starchy vegetables, lean protein, healthy fats, appropriate portion size, and that was tasty, that tastes good. And then be able to go to your doctor, talk to your doctor in the month of June and get them to do some labs. What labs do we need to do? Check your liver and your cholesterol and your urine to make sure you're not having microalbuminuria. Make sure they're checking your thyroid and vitamin D. I told you my vitamin D was low. I just saw my doctor today, and he's got me taking some vitamin D. Get outside, right? That's what he said. Get outside. Get out in the sun. And in this month, be able to incorporate some form of activity, some form of exercise. And I told you that I'm working on some body sculpting things, right? So the weight has come down. It's amazing. But now let's work on sculpting, right? So getting some toning, maintaining some muscle. All of those things are what we do here on the channel. Make sure that you're doing that. And then call to action. All right, so join the challenges. Join the challenges. Don't just let them pass you by. When you show up, tell your story. Like Steve was saying that he was fasting, what he broke his fast with. You've heard my story. I've shared with you what I'm breaking my fast with. All of those encourage the community. They build the community. They enrich the community. So when you show up, tell your story. Claim your seat. Say, I'm here. And then invite someone. Send them a link. Let them know what's going on here on the channel. New year, new you. New year, new you. Actually, let me back up for a minute because I think I skipped one of the challenges. So in the month of May, the challenge was to find someone and teach them the new year, new you process. On our website, there is the playlist that says how to reverse diabetes. That is a perfect one for you to send to people that are in your community, people that you are working with, people that you are mentoring. Okay, let me go ahead and I'll drop that in the chat. Right, send them the link. Let them know, hey, this is what's happening. Right, how to reverse diabetes. And then also there's a playlist out there, how to fast successfully. Right, you can see all of those out on the channel. So find someone to mentor. Be with them. Don't just tell them about it and then disappear. You want to be there to check in with them and let them know that you are walking alongside them. Okay? So join the challenges, tell your story when you show up, and then invite someone to the channel. Invite them. There are over 1 billion people on the planet that have either diabetes or pre-diabetes. You can be the voice of change. You can be the voice of success. You can change your family structure. You can change your community, your doctor's office. I went to my doctor today and I was telling him about the new year, new you process. This is the second time I've met him. My doctor retired and he took over the practice. So I saw him back in March-ish. Saw him for the second time today. And he was amazed right, at the numbers and the progress. And I said to him, yeah, this is fasting. And so we spent some time talking about fasting. Share it with your doctor, share it with your pastor, share it with your church. Let them know that there is success that's happening. And you've seen the people who've come on talking about their success. One of the new features that we have added to the show, to the channel, is This Week in Review. This Week in Review is a recap of what goes on for the week. People who've missed it, we love for you to come on the live, but if you didn't make it, get there 6 o'clock Central on the channel on Sundays, This Week in Review. As always, I am excited to see you, excited to see the success that you're having, excited for the community and the camaraderie that I feel when I come here, and the ability to talk and just interact with you. Love it, love it, love it. As I say always, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new you. We'll see you on Sunday, This Week in Review, 6 o'clock Central, right here on the channel. And then Monday at our regular time for Dwain Woode MD Live, right here. Have a great weekend. Thank you for stopping by. Good night.